I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. We can introduce ourselves as we go through.
Scrooge.
My name is Jeff Horn.
I'm Tristan Dome.
I'm Ryan Churchill.
And 20 years ago, I can see a lot of people in the room that weren't around when that film came out. A lot of us were around. We're just going to take some time and discuss the film itself, what went on behind the scenes, but what led it to the film's release in 1998, and then we'll add on other things as well. Back in the night, an American Godzilla film had been in the works, or attempted to be in the works, for quite some time. There were a lot of stops and starts and things like that. Sony purchased the rights to do this film probably mid-90s at least, and it was picking up a lot of steam. If anyone's seen the movie Twister with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, thank you. That movie was directed by a man named Jan de Bont, and he was going to make a Godzilla movie. Wanted a certain amount of money for a budget, and Sony told him, no, that's too much money, can't do that, and so he dropped out as the director. At that point, he went and made Twister, and Godzilla became a tornado, or a series of tornadoes. So if you watch Twister and think about it as that being Godzilla going across the country, it might make a little more sense, or you can see where that worked. So then Sony at that point tried to get other directors, and Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin had been very successful with Independence Day. And they were signed up to make the film. If you watch Independence Day, you'll see a couple of little tributes. You'll see some Trendmasters figures appear a couple of times in that film, much as when you're watching Godzilla, you'll see some Independence Day aliens in that film as well, when they're in Madison Square Garden and all the eggs are hatching and they go into the control booth. There's an Independence Day alien sitting on top of a computer monitor. So they came up with their own Godzilla. And before we go into that, anyone else want to add anything else to what led to the film being made? Or
I think pretty much covered it. I mean, going off the enormous success of Independence Day, they thought they had the perfect, director and team, especially also the miniature work of Independence Day and the practical effects too.
Right, and
I was gonna say the only I've always been fascinated by the backstory to this, especially the John Devon version, because the script was done by, I believe, is it Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, or are the names
vice versa?
Yeah, I can never get which surname was with which name, but like they went on to, I think their biggest success at the time was they did the script for the animated Aladdin that Disney put out, but they went on to do at least the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I've lost track of if they had any involvement with the other ones, but and most people know about this script, and it's actually it's interesting. Far more akin to the Japanese Godzilla that we know, but they still received screen credit on the final movie. The screenplay is listed as by them and Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. And I think that's just sort of a pay or play idea. Like, there's no real evidence of their screenplay in the final movie, but whatever the contracts that were drawn up long ago or whatever was dealt, to account for any cross-pollination in the development process, they were still given credit.
Right, and with the beauty of the internet, if you were to do a search or try and find their script, it is out there to be read to see what could have been, and it is fairly interesting.
Brian, you want to?
And Toho did go meet with them, and they had sort of a series of guidelines and rules for them to go by. One of them was that Godzilla shall only eat fish, and another one was that Godzilla should not die.
Followed that one real closely, didn't they?
There you go.
They eat humans.
So when it came time for, Devlin and Emmerich were great at doing these teaser trailers and things to build interest and get the hype going. So the first thing that any of us had seen, and it may have actually been around '97, because I remember one of the, over at the Radisson, so one of the earlier G-Cons or G-Fests, they had that actual trailer during the entire convention, and the trailer that it was the one where the kids go into the museum with their teacher, and they're talking about the T-Rex, and we're just marveling at how great it is, how cool it is, and then all of a sudden, the foot comes down through and just smashes, and then takes off and goes, and then you hear Godzilla's roar, and then you see the logo. And that was the first, everyone's like, oh, this is great, this is gonna be great. And so they played that thing throughout the convention. And for the longest time, all that we saw of Godzilla was that foot. And we'd see t-shirts with that foot, and toys.
I remember when they re-released a lot of the classic Toho Godzilla movies, they had like a sticker that they put on the front cover, like saying Godzilla stomped with approval, and it was that foot, that very dinosaurian G98, you know.
And so that was the beginning of the hype. And Centropolis is the company that made it, and that was Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich's company. They came to G-Fest it had to have been the '97 G-Fest, and we're talking to fans and interviewing everyone to see what they thought of Godzilla and what they'd like to see in a Godzilla movie. And they had a Godzilla website, and it was one of the earliest websites back in the middle '90s, where they had our interviews on there, and we're like, oh God, I made it on the web. Oh, that's so cool. And everyone's just geeking out, saying, oh, Godzilla should do this, and then the next thing we know, suddenly the artwork for the Underoos leaked on the internet, and everyone saw it, and they said, that's Godzilla. And it was the typical, I think it may be on the cup in that way, but it was this type of Godzilla, I think underwater with a pair of iguana, or looking like the iguana with a submarine, and that was, at that time, they denied that, oh, that's just concept art, that's not what it's really going to look like. But all of us found out, of course, yes, that's exactly what he was going to look like. And some of our kids, or some of you, may have worn the Godzilla pajamas and the Underoos themselves and the things, so you know that's exactly what he ended up looking like. But as we started getting closer to the actual movie, the hype machine began to roll, and we saw other trailers. I remember Matthew Broderick hosted on Saturday Night Live, and Tracy Morgan came out, and he's humming the Ifukube music, and is Mothra going to be in it? And oh, I love Godzilla, and he's doing all this. Matthew Broderick, no, Mothra's not going to be in it. And this was the opening monologue. So they had the thing, and the musical guests were Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page doing that "Walk with Me" or "Come with Me." Yeah, so where they take cashmere and mix it up and ruin it, but that's just the Led Zeppelin and me having a problem with that. But and so it was a real big hype machine behind that movie. The thing I remember most about it, and Carl and I went and saw it together as a sneak preview the night before at a big 30-theater multiplex, and they were expecting a huge turnout for that movie, and we got in the theater, and there were the three of us and maybe two other people to see this movie. And then, why is it like this one? Oh, Michael Jordan and the Bulls have a playoff game tonight. Well, we know who's bigger and badder than Godzilla, and that's Michael Jordan. So the turnout of the theater was not that big. But even though most people don't consider it a box office hit, it did pretty good box office. That opening weekend was huge. It may not have gone on and continued to draw at that level, but all told, I think they did pretty good with it.
I think it was just like the negative press. It was one of the first times you saw a tentpole movie based on a sort of geek-friendly property like that, where we started to become aware that maybe the box office isn't the only thing that matters because of the critical and the fan reaction. So that's probably where, and maybe they did overestimate it somewhat. Like, so I don't know what their
Well, then we could talk about the advertising though, because the advertising at the time, that wasn't for lack of trying, because when you talk about the things on the cup there, the Taco Bell, everyone remembers the wonderful Taco Bell commercials with the Chihuahua. Those are some of my great childhood memories of remembering listening to that on TV. It was like, oh wow, actually Godzilla's on TV in a commercial with a talking dog, advertising some quality Mexican food, and so it's one of those things. I mean, it wasn't for lack of trying, they definitely tried to get the movie out there.
Right, and much like anything else, there were other food crossovers as well. I remember there being Edie's ice cream that came in your little multi-pint containers that, much like Moose Tracks or something that you get today, the ice cream was a vanilla chocolate swirl that had the Godzilla feet that were chocolate candies that were inside of the ice cream, and we went through a lot of that in my house.
I had Godzilla chapstick going, like when I was going to school. I would have been like 7 going on 8 at the time. And yeah, it was just like lip balm with the Godzilla logo on it, but when you bought it, it came with like a little rubber lizard wrapped around it. Just like, not too different from that figure right there.
I mean, they had a lot of merchandise tied with this, like a lot. I mean, think about like 2014 compared to that, where I had to freaking harass the staff at Party City to find anything Godzilla related. 98 had everything. I mean, I had Band-Aids, Godzilla 98 Band-Aids. I was so fixed on getting this Godzilla kite as a prize at Chuck E. Cheese. Oh, I got it. If I could have brought it, I would have brought it. It's still intact. It was one of my favorite things because I saw that right up on the top wall of the top prizes, and I'm like, I'm going to get that, and I did. And I had a lot of different things. Oh yes, absolutely. For Chuck E. Cheese. It was totally worth, I don't know, probably how many hundreds of dollars my parents spent just to get me a kite that probably cost like 30 cents. So.
Yeah, it's funny too that you mentioned the advertising campaign, keeping his appearance such a big mystery and a big secret. Even after I saw the movie, like I know I was young at the time, but like it was one of my first weird off-putting experiences where it's like, I watched that movie and I came out and I still didn't really know what he looked like. Obviously I look at it now and I can clearly see it, but because a lot of it was at night and a lot of it, you know, they want to show the scale, so he literally overfills the frame most of the time. There's like one good shot at the end where you see him in profile crossing the Brooklyn Bridge when you get a shot of the silhouette. But most of my understanding of what this Godzilla looked like came from the toys or the posters or all the merchandise that was in the stores. It was really surreal feeling.
Does anyone have the poster of, you know, size does matter, the foot? Anyone have that? I have, yeah, the huge giant one. That's another poster I remember seeing. Like, that's all you saw was the foot.
They also had ads like in the bigger cities, like his foot is as big as this bus, you know, his head is as big as this building, you know, weird things like that.
And you are a part of this as well, sir.
The ad campaign was really good. It was exciting. I remember it. I avoided watching the movie for about 8 to 10 years. I then saw it finally reluctantly. It was about as much as I thought.
Right. So,
yeah, do we go there now?
yeah.
Oh, I'm totally ready whenever you are.
Once it came out and we saw this Godzilla, I think the response across fandom of a certain age at least was pretty resoundingly negative, as you would imagine. I mean, we're used to the Godzilla that we all grew up with, and the mannerisms of that Godzilla and the characteristics of that Godzilla, and then we had this new Godzilla, and things had changed quite a bit. So among that, and people talk about Star Wars and The Last Jedi and how that divides certain Star Wars fans. And I've heard people say, oh, there was that same divide in the Godzilla fandom. No, there wasn't. It was pretty much everybody in the same camp feeling the same way. So that was among the older fans. Now, the younger fans.
You want to go first?
I would love, so give me a raise of hands. Who hates this movie? Okay, hands down. Raise of hands who like this movie. Okay. And then finally raise their hands and people are just like, it's like, it is what it is. Okay, so cool. For those of you who rose your hand to say you liked it, I'm with you, okay? So let me give you let's get this out of the way. To me, is it a Godzilla movie? No. I mean, that's as simple as that. Is that what Godzilla is to me? No. But going that aside, I enjoyed the film for what it is. And there's a lot of cool shots of the Zilla creature, a lot of as I grew up, I remember as a kid, of course I loved it because it was some form of Godzilla being thrown at me. I mean, I was going to every store, buying every freaking Treadmaster figure you could find, the dudes that the military guys no one cared about, forget that. I got all the Godzilla figures, the babies, the eggs, the big Godzillas, the stomping ones, everything. I mean, it was being thrown at me. So as a kid, of course, I had that through that filter. But as I got older and I watched this, I'm like, this isn't horrible for what it is. Is it a Godzilla movie to me? No, but it's a fun movie to enjoy. Jean Reno's one of my favorite parts of the movie because he's, one of the Frenchiest French guys who ever French. So he's one of the big saving graces of that movie. And even though I like Matthew Broderick, his approach to acting was trying to see how many flies he can catch with his mouth in the entire movie. And then I don't even want to know what I want to call the female, the blonde lady. I forgot
Maria Portillo.
Yeah, I don't know what drugs she was on during the filming of that. But besides, the bad stuff aside, I enjoy it for what it is, which is it's a fun monster movie in itself.
Anytime I've revisited it, I want to see the movie where it's kind of like the mismatched buddy cop story between Hank Azaria and Jean Reno.
I would love that. We call that the French New York Connection. I think we could do that one. French New York Connection. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, everyone's go-to whipping boy for a joke, but really, I mean, it's like, yeah, of course, it sucked as that guy. No, but it's not that bad of a movie. If it's on TV, I will sit there and watch it. And no, I'm not being forced. There's not a gun in my head. I'm watching it. And it's like it's fun for what it is.
I have a similar reaction. I don't think I'm as in love with it as you, maybe, but like when I saw it the first time, I enjoyed it. It's probably my favorite Dean Devlin, Roland Emmerich movie. I'm not really a fan of their work in general, but it didn't bother me. It was one of those things where, like, especially when Godzilla 2000 came out a few years later, I didn't have the hostile opinion that fandom necessarily had. I didn't even know Godzilla fandom existed until like Godzilla 2000 came out and I discovered G-Fan and whatnot. So I didn't even know that this was all out there. But like I didn't have the hostility, but there was a distinction in my mind. The same way it's like a few years earlier, I've grown up on Batman, Adam West, and Michael Keaton, say, or like the Burton Schumacher movies. It's like I enjoyed both, but the one I got excited about was the new ones in theaters, like because that was what I was exposed to. I guess like for me in my childhood brain, like that's what defined Batman for me. So in the same way, Godzilla was a man in a rubber suit in a Japanese movie. He was bulletproof, all these things, but like this still counted in a weird way. It was still valid as Godzilla, but like as I've grown older, I have reassessed. I enjoy it as like just another monster movie.
I mean, we can talk about it after talk about the film, but think about the impact it actually had on the franchise, not just in a negative way. I mean, really, if it wasn't for the fact that everyone hated it, why not have gotten Godzilla 2000 or restarted the franchise? It was more of like a, they gave it to the Americans, and they're like, well, maybe you're not old enough to play with that right now, so we'll take that, and we'll do something, because then think about 2014, they stopped making Godzilla movies after Final Wars, and 2014 came out, and they're like, oh, you made all that money, well, back and shit Godzilla. So I think, personally, I believe that you can thank Godzilla 98 for even having the live series.
I also think, and that's a very apt comparison, because you look at the Japanese films that react to the American interpretation. They simultaneously bring the franchise back to the roots, but then it also motivates them to be a little more daring or step outside their comfort zone, like the way they radically redesigned Godzilla, or it's just, or say in Shin Godzilla, like
different,
building it from the ground up. It refocuses them, let's bring back the classic spirit of Godzilla, but it also motivates them, well, we got to show them how we would reinvent it. We can't just go back and make the same thing again. So it does have like a positive impact.
Does everyone know what Kenichiro Satsuma, who is actually here, does anybody know what he said about this movie?
I saw.
He said it's not Godzilla. It has no spirit.
Actually, I saw what he did with this movie. It was not even over yet, and he got up out of his seat and he walked out.
If I had seen it,
So, yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Did he walk out like this?
That's maybe my biggest problem, is that, is because I don't seem to feel anything when I watch it. And like some of the people who like it, they say, well, it's good popcorn fun, just enjoy it for what it is. Yeah. Well, if I want a movie like that, I'm going to choose something else. But I'm going to choose another Godzilla movie. But I'm going to not choose that. But the ad campaign is great. That helped. But the aftermath, what about that? I mean, that's the problem. But then the part about is it a Godzilla movie, you need to admit it, no. But that's a pretty big problem when people come out of a movie and they say, well, it's not Godzilla. Well, that's the title. That's a pretty big problem. You know, you don't go out of a Star Wars movie or like something like that just coming out and saying, well, it's not Star Wars. That's
Yes, I
problem. That's a huge problem. Yeah, now it is. But back then in the classics,
Right.
that wasn't going to happen.
But think about how much time has passed. We're talking about 20 years, though. I mean, I don't understand being that upset. Like, think about Last Jedi just came out, last winter? And so, of course, but imagine Last Jedi 10 years from now. I'm not saying it's good because I didn't really enjoy it that much either, but it's like that time frame in between. A lot has happened between 98 and, 2018 right now in the Godzilla franchise.
If you want to use the Star Wars analogy again, it's like the prequels are now being reassessed by people who were kids seeing them for the first time. Or like Hayden Christensen, when he did his first convention appearance, he wasn't met by boos, he was met by applause and cheers. Like, this guy has been the subject of ridicule for his performance for the past 15 years, something like that.
I don't deserve some of that, in my opinion.
I mean, he's entertaining more than any other actor almost.
Oh, yeah?
So regarding Roland Emmerich, does it seem that he maybe just got the property and got the rights to do the movie, but then he sort of went off and made whatever he wanted to make?
Well, I'm pretty sure he said in interviews he didn't actually care about, I don't know,
Yeah,
what he said flat out said, I don't care about Godzilla or this franchise at all. He's just going to do what he can with this opportunity given to him.
Yeah, he just considered him camp and was going to do, well, it's, there's this long history, we know there's this long history of it, but he came to it and said, well, we're going to do it right. All these other that have been done, 28, however many there were prior to that, forget about that, we're going to do it right. And then a very elitist, very snobbish attitude towards it.
And that does come out, and it's not like you can see that. It's not like I'm saying, of course, it's the only Godzilla movie I watch. Like, that's the only one I watch every day. I can't go to sleep each night without watching it, and I do every night, so I sleep very fine, thank you.
And I usually watch it when I want to become angry and turn.
Well, you don't see, you're on that side, you don't feel the seething, like the aura of anger that's coming from Jeff to my right here. It's amazing, it's amazing feeling.
It's getting hot.
I watch it when I want to fall asleep.
Right. Well,
That's actually a weird thing, because I went with a bunch of friends to see the Rift Tracks version a couple
I
years
missed
ago.
that. I'm so
When I was in
angry about
theaters.
that.
It was a fun time. The biggest laugh was because I saw it just out of the side of Detroit at the end when they showed the burning Madison Square Garden. Everyone reacts and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, it's just a live feed of Detroit." I got the hometown laugh. But it was funny. I remember I was talking to my friends and none of them had seen it since the original release, and they were like hardcore Godzilla fans. It was no, it doesn't count. It pissed me off. I'm not going to give it my time of day. And I just found that very weird. And because even though it's not my favorite movie, I have actively never repurchased it since VHS. Like, I have gone out of my way to be like, I'm not giving my money to I'm not going to promote this. But at the same time, it's like I do revisit it from time to time. When it was on Netflix for a while, I watched it, or like you said, if it's on TV, like I'll throw it on, like just as background noise, or even to get sucked into. So but that might also be me, because I like to give movies that anger me a second chance to reassess, because you never know, maybe you didn't get it, or maybe things have matured, I don't know.
Well, to the gentlemen on this table that hate this movie, is there any redeeming qualities to you?
Jean Reno.
Okay, good.
Yes. Probably.
Yes, get back, come on.
Right.
French, to the French.
Right. And Carla brought this up early. Yeah. Carol had brought this up, but when they get stopped at trying to enter the base,
Yes.
and he said, yeah, exactly.
Well, no,
He's
sir,
like,
I'm fine.
I'm fine, thank you very much. And so then Matthew Broderick looks at him and he's like, Elvis Presley movies. And so, and there is some truth to that because those movies played all around the world, and a lot of people who didn't speak English, they went and saw Elvis movies and would have, you know, if I'm going to speak American English, I'm going to speak like Elvis, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And so, but one of the things, going back to positives about this movie, and I don't have many, I had not watched it in quite some time, and then preparing for this, I decided I'm going to watch it again. And it's streaming on Hulu, anyone that wants to watch the whole thing, because I'm trying to find it, a way to watch it, because the VHS doesn't work anymore. And
Try putting the DVD.
one of the things I try to do, because what a lot of people have said, and I know I've said it as well, is that if you didn't call this movie Godzilla and you called it The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms or something like that, then it's really not that bad a movie. And so I would say that to myself. And so watching it this time, I'm like, let me look at it from that standpoint and try and get something positive out of it. And even that I struggled with. There's just so many problems with it.
Were you then just like, this looks like a bad rip-off of Godzilla?
Right, exactly. Now I'm going back to the first one. Yeah, it's a bad rip-off of Godzilla. But no, so that's what a lot of us said, because we just, okay, maybe we've got these rose-colored glasses and it's not Godzilla to us. So if we just take that out of it, and it's a good movie, and it really still, there's a lot of problems with it, I think. But one of the positives that I do take away from it was, prior to it coming out, it spawned re-interest in the Toho Godzilla. A lot of those Random House books that Mark Saraceni wrote, JD's compendium, came out as a result of the lead into this movie. There were a lot of the VHS from, I can't remember the name of the company now, but when you took the spines of the VHS and lined them up, it looked like the '84 Godzilla. Anchor Bay, thank you very much, yeah. And so that was really neat that came out. The Trendmasters figures, even though they started a couple years before it, I'm sure that was all, because again, even though the movie came out in '98, it had been in the works for several years, and that was probably part of it, yeah. Right. Right, exactly. Right. And so we got those products as a result of this movie, or as a lead into this movie. The other, the Godzillas, the little ones like Bob Eggleton had worked on, the Godzilla Likes to Sleep, or whatever, those books. And there were a number of those kids' books. And then those books, my son grew up with, those were the bedtime stories, and we'd read through those books, and he wore them out, and so those were, very important byproduct of everything.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I remember because Dark Horse reissued a lot of their Godzilla comics that had already ceased, like the story had run its course, or they had canceled it, but they reissued. I don't know how far it went, but it at least covered the first arc or so, and I know they re-released the color special and the Terror of Godzilla, like the manga adaptation of '84. Like they re-released and like new on the stands, just with different covers. And I remember going and picking these up on a weekly, monthly basis from the local convenience store, thinking, oh, because I never knew that they existed before. Like, I didn't know these were reissues. So even that, like, there was a resurgence of even recent Godzilla material.
And then on top, we also created another wonderful thing that this movie helped spawn, which is the wonderfully made animated series, if anyone remembers that. Yeah. Which, to me, was another great moment in my childhood, because it was it
Fox Kids.
Fox Kids. Yeah, Fox Kids. Oh, man, great memories of that, because this is the first time, as a kid, I know there was the original Hanna-Barbera series, but as a kid, watching Godzilla do what he does, what I have seen in movies, but in cartoon form, where he's going around the world fighting all these different monsters, it was really cool to me. and I love it.
Aliens and Monster Island.
Yeah,
everything was there.
Yeah, everything, yeah, and like there's different, like I think there's 2 seasons. 2 seasons of like I think 40.
I'd say 3.
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 seasons of like 40, 60 episodes of Godzilla doing what he does and what we love him. Like that was a cool series, and they tried to give him his breath. Yeah, no, I was gonna give his strength back of the breath and different, making him stronger, and then like some cool storylines of like using the old dead Godzilla as like a cyborg one. That was cool. Like so stuff like that. That's another cool thing that came out of the movie, and really should help shape my childhood. I mean, this movie helped shape my childhood because it was like the first example of Godzilla being thrown at me. So that's why I just love it really.
Yeah, but that animated series was actually very enjoyable.
I remember it was weird when I went back and revisited it, realizing that a lot of the supporting characters that had carried over from the movie, like they were the same actors doing the voices. Like obviously they didn't get Matthew Broderick, but a lot of the supporting cast were the same actors from the movie.
Oh, and it was also cool that they finally released the series because I went and bought this like really horribly made bootleg copy of like it looked like a child had written like crayon on the front cover for it, and the discs kept falling out of the CD case, so it'd be just like 7 DVDs just shaking around in my box, and they'd be just thrown all over the place. So it was a real mess. But I'm glad they finally released it because I went and bought that real quick in a hurry.
Regarding how this is a kaiju movie, does it feel like Godzilla's a kaiju or an animal more? Yeah.
Well, did the actors in the movie seem like actors, or did they just seem like people that wandered onto set and didn't know what they were doing?
One of them is named Animal. Is that?
So did we ever figure out what was the deal with like half the cast of The Simpsons showing up?
Yeah, I think that was like the only time of like multiple Simpson actors being together, except for The Simpsons, right? For some weird reason.
And in live action, no less.
Right. So you've got Hank Azaria, who's Animal. You've got
Nancy
Harry
Cartwright.
Sherry. Nancy Cartwright plays. She's got a
Secretary,
carpal tunnel cast on her wrist, and she's the one that when Godzilla first comes, and Harry Shearer, who's also a Simpsons actor, voice actor, he's what's the name of the news anchor? Yes, he's on the phone with someone, looking away from the window. Typical comedic thing that the big story walks right behind him, and he's looking away from it, and she turns around and sees it. And, sir, I think your big story just walked by. What? What are you talking about? And turns back, and then the tail goes by. So, that type of thing. But those 3, at least those 3 are Simpsons voice actors. Yes, Hank Azaria played Animal, the cameraman.
I love his delivery in that movie. I don't know why. It's like, oh, I can't let Lucy know, she'll hurt me. That reminds me a lot of my own dad.
Well, this part where the foot comes down and then he realizes there's nothing wrong, just the way he laughs, he's like, he's really frantic. I always laughed at that when I was a kid.
It's oddly real in retrospect, though. Even if he was playing it for laughs, like it's a real moment.
Which was another cool thing about which I'll get to some stuff I don't like about this movie, but it's another cool thing is that I love of course, the Japanese Godzilla movies, but something about the '98 one is that you actually got to see more from the ground up of something coming through the city and destroying things. And you still saw that in certain films, but like really like the realism of it was able to be, you see it more because special effects and everything had deemed it so that was another thing that was cool.
You also hadn't gotten into the new millennium where people realized you could literally do everything with CG. That was one thing that '98 did, and I was even happy that Gareth Edwards' film did, is like, I hate it when the camera starts performing impossible feats because it's a digital camera and it can swoop all around and dive, and it kind of bothers me. And the fact that like a lot of those movies like from the '90s, because they were still shooting animatronic elements or real pyrotechnic, like everything was going off live footage where the camera was locked down on set, so there is that very realistic point of view. The camera is not defying, logic or physics in any way.
Which maybe something that Jeff could talk about is, I didn't realize how much miniature work and
Yeah,
practical
just
effects
insane.
that went into this movie. When I saw the pictures, I was completely shocked. It was really cool.
Right, that's one of the things, is that everyone thinks, oh, it's just a digital Godzilla, it's just computer-generated Godzilla. But they actually did have a man in a suit that was used for a couple of scenes. I believe this is the scene where Godzilla comes out of the sewer and Matthew Broderick faces him right there. Well, when Godzilla, that is a man in a suit with that Godzilla suit. The other thing is, yes, a lot of miniatures work. And the nice thing about it is that one of our guests this weekend at mostly going to be down with the model thread, but Stan Hyde will be interviewing him on his own. Gene Rizzardi is here this weekend. And Gene and his team and his company did a lot of the miniature work, did all the miniature work for that film. And Gene's also worked on things like Titanic, Star Trek films,
Jaws 3D.
Jaws 3D he worked on. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And worked with some very nice people on that. Gene and I had some exchanges about that recently on Facebook. But Gene does wonderful work. So if you get a chance, you can stop down and see him down in the model room in Kitty Hawk. Also, he's got his session this weekend. Like I said, Stan will be talking to him. And I believe Gene is going to be, let me see here for a moment. Well, I'll go over this in a moment. Oh, okay. Gene will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock in Ballroom 2, which is the one right next to us. And, you know, like I said, Gene has done a lot of miniature work, so it's not going to just be his Godzilla 98 work, but it'll be his entire career, so that's really neat to see. So, yeah, Godzilla was both a man in a suit and the CG and animatronic as well, right?
Regarding the acting, I don't think I'd ever blame the actors for anything in this movie that's bad regarding the acting. I would blame the script. I would definitely blame the script for that. Nobody's going to deliver some of that stuff well. It's impossible.
Listen, I like Matthew Broderick, I did, but it was Matthew Broderick's day off every set, every day, every day on that set.
Like
just
he's an
staring.
anti-hero.
But I mean, he just stares. He stares with his mouth open through the entire film. And then, like I said, the actress who plays Audrey, I mean, oh my God, that does give me a headache. Okay, that's definitely like. Yes, I like the movie, but there's definitely some things that obviously could be better. I mean, some of the actors didn't really care; they didn't know what they were really doing. And then also, not to mention, one of the best parts of the movie, think about using your film to get jabs at people with.
I was going to bring that up. Yes.
Please do.
Yeah. So when they came out with Independence Day, they were, hoping, and like I said, they do great teaser trailers, great get people into it. And back at the time, there were two critics from Chicago, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, who were competing critics for the Chicago Tribune, Gene was, and for the Chicago Sun-Times, Roger was. And they had a program on PBS at the time, and this was the first one of these types of shows that came out called At the Movies. It went through a number of other things, and this was a very influential show. People would really watch this show, decide if they were going to see a movie or not based on what Siskel and Ebert had to say about it. And so when they did their review of Independence Day, they savaged it. They just tore it to pieces. But Independence Day was a huge, huge hit. And so they were shaken. This was in Godzilla, there's Mayor Ebert and his aide or sidekick or whatever he is, whose name is Gene.
Very physically similar
Yes.
to.
So Michael Lerner, the actor, played Roger or played Mayor Ebert. We don't get a first name for him. And then Gene, I don't know the actor that plays him, but balding, dark hair. That's what Gene Siskel looked like as well. So, right, you get that as well. And so they made a joke out of Mayor Ebert and his eating, and he's eating the chocolates, the Hershey Kisses, and everything like that. And then when Gene gets enough of Mayor Ebert, and he's like, that's it, I've had enough. And he does his thumbs down. And that was their big thing. Their big, in that show, was thumbs up or thumbs down for a movie rating.
That's how you get 2 thumbs up on a movie that does well and 2 thumbs down on a stinker.
Right. So as their feedback towards these 2 critics was to make these actors their inside joke at Siskel and Ebert, and it was not even remotely subtle. And as soon as you see them, you know exactly what they're getting at.
Dumb.
Yeah, it's
So
another.
petty.
Yeah,
dumb.
So
exactly.
incredibly petty.
Right.
Man up.
Right. Exactly. So that was that's just the Mayor Ebert and Gene story, or the background behind that.
It's actually weird when you think about how much real estate in that movie is allotted to that middle finger they're sending at their enemies. Like,
Yeah, they're
right.
paying actors for screen time for people that don't actually need to be in the film just to say we don't like.
They showed up, they recited dialogue, and none of this ended up on the cutting room floor. Like,
I mean, it would have been enough to just have, you know, Mayor Ebert on top of a taxi, you know, a little placard on top of a taxi with a thumbs up or something like that, or have just one shot with the 2 of them, and you go, oh, okay, I get that. That's not bad. That's pretty funny. But to give them as much screen time and as much dialogue as
they
you
are, they are just shy of subplot. They are basically a running gag.
That would have been actually fun. I think that would have been a funnier joke. I mean, if you really want to do something quick, it should have been like the 2 of them getting, you know, stomped on. First, I mean, the whole making it a subplot, yeah, it was just stupid. I think Steph would be funny.
Right.
Also, Roland Emmerich, he stated that 98% of people love his movies and 2% don't. That's part of the whole thing going into why he's upset at critics. It can't be 98%.
I mean, you all love Roland Emmerich movies, right? All of you, all 98% of you?
I mean, the thing about it is, and now that they've gone their separate ways, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, Roland Emmerich still has these types of movies that he puts out. And when you see a Roland Emmerich film, it's not surprising. I mean, the Day After Tomorrow,
2012.
2012, all these. So there are. He's good at these big disaster films and things like
Stuff
that.
blows up.
Yeah, stuff blows up. You're not I mean, they popcorn movies they call them, or you just turn off your brain and go watch.
Just a little more pretentious in attitude than a Michael Bay, though. There seems to be he wants there to be some level of dignity that actually isn't there.
I'm sorry, we said dignity? That's really where we want to be throwing around here.
Very strong word.
Yes.
Well, what a great segue.
Actually, that also goes into something I wanted to talk about, which is the name, like the band naming of Gino and then the
Right.
retrofitting to Zilla.
Which is
I want opinions
Yeah,
on
which
that.
is a part of the aftermath of 20 years past and everybody getting in their kicks and their licks, including the Japanese, and saying, hey, it's not fun. We're gonna take that back.
Right. So where Gino came from was Richard Pusateri, who, if you have any of the classic media DVDs, Richard did the commentary on Godzilla's Revenge. He's a good friend, and he came up with Gino, which stands for Godzilla in name only. And so he called him Gino, and that stuck with the fans. And so a lot of times you'll see him referred to as Gino in fan publications, and even this panel, until we realized that, yeah, it shouldn't be called Gino, but it was called Gino 20 years retrospect.
So, and that's kind of where I stand on it. Like, we're talking, like, again, the devil's advocate right here. Like coming into it seemed kind of petty to me, and also, like, especially in hindsight, because I would see publications that, they are trying to present some level of quality or what have you, and like they're still referring to it as Gino. The movie is officially titled Godzilla. If you want to put it in brackets, 1998, and then if you do want to push it even further, then yeah, they Toho rebranded the character as Zilla.
Right. Well, then that takes us from, at that point, we go to Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Monsters, All Out Attack, or whatever the full name is, GMK.
I did refer to him as Gino for a long time.
Right. but that is, it's mentioned in that film at the very beginning when the lead character, the military, the father, and I can't recall his name.
I don't know, but I'm sure I'm watching.
Right. Yes. So he's giving a talk to the young, I don't know if they're officers or trainees or what they are, but he's talking about kaiju and coming back. And then one guy leans over and says, "Oh, yes, they talk in America about having Godzilla," or whatever the actual dialogue is. And they go, "Well, yeah, they refer to it Godzilla, but yeah, no, it really wasn't." So they even, at the beginning of GMK, kind of push that off and say, yeah. They think it is in America, but yeah, no, it's not Godzilla. So that was the first mention of it in a Toho film. And then we had the Final Wars piece.
Brought down the house with it played at G-Fest. I still remember that.
Yeah, and so in that scene, it takes place in Australia, and we all of a sudden, much like the way Godzilla appears in the '98 film, where everyone's standing around and the cars start bouncing, and there's these footprints, and it's raining, and everyone's being jostled, and what is this? And all of a sudden, it comes out from behind this building, and the bricks fall and things like that. So then we're in Sydney, and people are there, and all of a sudden here he comes out from behind a building, and people start running crazy, and he's doing some walking around.
They even replicate, it's a very similar shot from behind, just the feet slamming into the ground one after the other. It's very reminiscent of the shots in '98.
Right. And I would imagine the cost to do that scene was probably the catering budget on the '98 film, based on that. But then was it Blink 182 or what's the song?
Sum 41.
Yeah, Sum 41.
Okay.
We're all to blame.
Right, and so we see Zilla in there. It becomes nighttime. Godzilla's there, and in one of the montage, I mean, they are all the Godzilla
Massive
monster
battles.
battles are just montages, very short. Takes Zilla, slaughters him into the Sydney Opera House, gets the fire, boom, explosion, cut, go on to the next scene. So,
Well, then don't forget my favorite Exilian Adam Lambert starts freaking out and saying that a tuning, what was it? Yeah, it was
Tuna-eating monster.
tuning monster, yeah, useless.
right.
It's like, so the Japanese got that good to jab in at the. It's like they did their own Siskel and Ebert joke in the Final Wars.
Yeah, but it was much shorter.
Yeah.
You asked about the design too. It's very different. And Toho was shown the design, and then they signed off on it.
Yes, they did.
That's my problem is with the legs, sort of chicken legs. People talk about that every once in a while. It sort of looks very Jurassic Park.
Yeah, well,
There's a lot of stuff about Jurassic Park in the movie too.
I think that's generally what it was. Like the movie was very much
About after
reaction.
the 90,
Yeah.
about after the 90-minute mark or so, it turns into almost like a different movie.
And it's very much like let's cash in on the Jurassic Park craze. Like even that trailer you mentioned where it's like we're bigger and better than the T-Rex, we're gonna smash that right up.
right. Well, that was one of the things that that '98 at the G-Con that took place there when Ken Satsuma walked out, Yoshio Tsuchiya was also a guest that year, and he, in his panel the next day, everyone wanted to ask him, what did you think about it? What did you think about it? And his response was just very simple. He said, it was a lot like a Jurassic Park movie. It wasn't like a Godzilla movie, but it was like Jurassic Park. It was like a Hollywood Jurassic Park. And that was, I mean, very diplomatic, and here's what I think about it. But, yeah, the one thing that happened, I believe this was toward the end of Tomoyuki Tanaka's life, that was one of the last things that he did was to approve that suit. And the thing about it, everyone was saying, well, Toho approved it, Toho approved it. At that point, there had been a lot of stop-start, let's get a Hollywood Godzilla film made, let's do this. And this was kind of the last chance for them to do it.
My understanding, their meeting was very ultimatum. Like,
Yeah.
Dean Devlin, Rowan Emmerich, they came in with their thing. It's like, either it's this or it's nothing at all.
Yeah, and you're not gonna have it made, and they're like, well, we wanna have that Hollywood movie made, so our hands are tied, we're going to have to approve it if we're gonna want to see this thing ever happen at all.
At least 5 years.
Yeah.
They've been trying to do this.
And then look at it now, 20 years later, Godzilla's kind of like that weird uncle you don't really invite to, social gatherings, but he eventually knows his way in. Now, he's a licensed character, he's in the comics, he has a role in the comics, he kind of has his own role in the, entire fandom as a polarizing figure at times, but let old Uncle Zilla in here and there.
She actually gets a bigger fight in the comics than he did in Final Wars. I was amused by that in, what was it, Lewis?
Yeah, one of the IDW comics. Any other questions? We're getting close to the end, but we'll finish up in about 5 minutes or so, we take questions. Yeah, so the question was, looking at the merchandising and the Trendmasters figures. So one of the things that happened with this is even after that image leaked, that Underoos image leaked, they denied it, said that's not what Godzilla's going to look like. But right up until midnight on that night of the premiere, the toy stores and the vendors didn't see it. No one saw the entire Godzilla, the entire body. And it wasn't until that came out that all of a sudden, if you went to Toys R Us, R.I.P., and on the day that movie came out, that's when the toys were all there, and it was all the Trendmasters figures, all looking pretty much the same, but had the thunder cracked tail, and you had shooting a fire bolt out of it. You press a button and it would shoot out. And then, like you were saying, then you could get a Jeep, or you could get a tank in the Army men that no one cared about. And so there were a lot of toys, and that was one of the things that hurt it, was all these toys and these tie-ins came out, but they didn't sell very well at all. Other than us, who probably bought, even though I didn't care for it, it was still Godzilla, so I had to have it. And
I
so,
still get excited seeing them. When I see that stuff in the dealer's room, I'm Gatorade. I'm like, woo!
yeah. But I remember one of the way that they did it, the Trendmasters figures, was the eyes were just an orange, swash of orange. There was no detail on it, so I've taken mine and I've detailed the eye with a very thin brush and things like that, just to try and make it look a little bit better. But I think they missed a real good opportunity, I think, with a lot of that. I'm going to go over here first. Matt?
Going to what Screw was talking about, the positive aspect of this film. I haven't watched it in years, and then a couple of weeks ago they had it on that TV station, El Rey.
Yeah.
That was a big kaiju con. The first half of this movie is really awesome, I think. Because you don't see like the opening shots of the old footage of them testing the bomb, and it zooms in on the egg, and then the shot of like the boat getting sucked under, which is a model, by the way. That big boat's a model.
Right.
In the opening, and really one of my favorite shots is when Jean Reno has the lighter, the Japanese guy, and the Japanese guy goes, "Godzilla." And the music slowly starts to swell up, and the shot of Matthew Broderick standing in the courtroom as the camera goes up.
See, that's what sucks about that, is that I thought that's the way to treat all Japanese guests. So when I hold my lighter to the guest, I usually get thrown out by security, and I don't know why exactly.
Yeah,
Well, you thought it was right.
Yeah.
it's like the inverse. The movie's like the inverse. Like the movie doesn't stink until Godzilla shows up. Like that's like it's like bizarre Godzilla. But like I was watching it on TV, like the first half is really like the best filmmaking of Emmerich's career. Suspense. Thank you.
Over here. Yes, David Arnold did the score, and he did a really good job. It's a really good score, definitely. On the end over here. Yeah, and that was one of the things that they did at the last minute was, well, they had gotten enough feedback that, you know, he didn't have this radioactive breath, didn't have the fire. So they had a couple scenes they inserted where he goes and roars and these cars start flipping and explode and gasoline fire goes out. It's like, okay, you tried to throw us a bone and then, like most of it, it just didn't quite work, but thanks for trying. In the back there, with the glasses. Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a favorite of the TriMasters Godzilla figures?
Oh, you mean of the 1998 TriMaster figures? There were some cool, I mean, there were some, the large ones you were talking
Yeah,
about.
I don't know if they were responsible for the big rubber puppet that was, again, sort of a Jurassic Park jab. The Lost World the previous year had these full size, yeah, and they had like full size, like full body T-Rex.
Yeah.
And they did one of those for Godzilla. I loved that.
I love the giant one, the giant 2-foot 1998 Godzilla. I love the box on that. Is one of my favorite
Is
boxes.
that the one that pivots at